Hello, welcome back to my channel. Happy holidays, everybody. Well, I guess when I upload this video, it's way after the new year. But anyway, happy holidays regardless. Today, as you can see from the title, we are going back to Boracity Magazine. And I found this little one, I think it's only was 17 minutes, less than 17 minutes long. And it's talking about the 2025 contract. So not sure what this is about, but let's find out. So this is a few months actually already. So I know a few months ago they announced that they renewed their contract, and I think this is something about that. But interesting title. The BTS 2025 contract renewal did not come out of nowhere. Let's go.
All of the BTS members just signed their third contract to continue being part of BTS as a 7-member group under their label Big Hit Music, part of HYBE Corporation. If you don't know, BTS is still a group despite being in the military, and they are
Yes, they are still a group, okay? For those of you, not you, many of those media out there, oh, they disbanded, they're on hiatus, oh my god, BTS no longer a group, they are no longer together. Come on, get a grip, get your facts. Okay.
currently in their second contract. This third BTS contract starts in 2025. And I'm very happy, but I'm not surprised at all because the signs were always there. When BTS announced that they were going to start their mandatory military service and focus on solo music, it was so easy to assume that it was the end. And I understand this coming from people who don't know much about the industry and BTS's contracts. But when it comes from people who don't know much about the industry and BTS's contracts,
I can understand ABC News. Okay, that's a Western, but this is this a Korean news? I don't know. I cannot read Hangul, so I don't know what this news about. But maybe just talk about how how they renew their contract. I don't know. But I hope that the Korean media are not spreading rumors.
But when it comes from people who actually work on media, it was frustrating to see that there was so much misinformation and nonsense predictions being pushed around by them.
The boys of BTS are headed in different directions.
I don't know.
See, that's one thing about if you are working in the industry, right? In the news industry, don't you have to fact check before you release it? I don't know. Don't you have to do research before you release it to the public?
If I think they're gonna come back.
BTS just revealed some major news, and it's not smooth like butter.
Like, maybe it's time to move on. The K-pop supergroup broke hearts around the world, announcing they're going to take some time to focus on solo projects. Their management says it's not a hiatus, so kind of sounds like it. I mean, I guess all good things must come to an end, right?
Billboard even had an article in 2022 titled BTS hiatus didn't come out of nowhere. These were the warning signs.
What warning signs? Billboard of all people, you should know better. What's going on? Okay, I can see this trend. Every time I watch Boracity Magazine, I get really worked up. Okay.
Allegedly, one of the writers even took out his name from the writing credits. Could it be because he realized that these predictions made no sense, or was he afraid that he wouldn't be able to interview BTS once they reunite? I don't know, but what I do know is that these kind of predictions are now 100% denied, not only by ARMY and BTS, but also by an official legal document. Let's see why the BTS 2025 contract renewal didn't come out of nowhere. These were the obvious signs the industry tried to dismiss.
The company behind Korean supergroup BTS is not just a record label or a management company.
I want to talk about the importance of this contract, not just about the fact that they are signing with HYBE. However, I know that there are people asking themselves, why are they signing with Big Hit and HYBE for a third time when they obviously have quote-unquote better opportunities with major international labels? Some people even say that it would be better for them to create their own label.
Yeah, I know a lot of K-pop company create their own label. Yeah.
like other K-pop idols do? The answer by some armies would be that Big Hit is BTS's label,
Yes.
and HYBE is BTS's company, because they built that company from the ground. When BTS started, they were the only group sustaining that label, and it's thanks to BTS and BTS only that the label is where it is now.
And if I recall, I'm sorry I keep pausing. I recall, was it last year when there's a new group came out from HYBE, and even within HYBE, their own management was saying, "Oh, this group is so good that it surpassed BTS early in their careers. Like without BTS, this new group will be nowhere." So people need to give credit where the credit's due. Yeah, I know if the new group's doing well, terrific. Doing good job, up and comers, good, but then they themselves within the same company should not be comparing the new group to BTS when BTS is the one that built the company for them. Okay.
In return, the CEO gifted big stocks to BTS. So even if they leave one day, they will continue making money from other groups signed to the label. But if you don't buy this maybe sentimental and dreamy idea, let's talk about the other options BTS rejected. In my opinion, no matter which label the BTS members choose, they're not going to be able to manage them 100% correctly, because no label has had the experience of successfully managing a group this big. If BTS signed with UMG or Universal Music Records, which is the biggest and most powerful music label in the world, the label will continue with some actions that go against BTS's philosophy, like payola, overworking and over-controlling artists, and underpaying musicians. This can be good for their numbers, but this kind of shady stuff can create allegations and other legal problems.
And it's not something that BTS wants to do or want to have any association with.
And they will definitely not help BTS's longevity. Think about the Western artists who have multiple legal battles with their own labels, preventing them to release music or leave the label. Others even have to re-record their discographies because they don't own their music. So what about creating their own label like some K-pop idols do? When K-pop idols end their 7-year contract, it's common for them to create their own label and have the freedom they didn't have under their previous contract with a K-pop label. However, since this
Am I mistaken? I kind of recall seeing some article about Jennie of Blackpink created her own company. Is that her own fashion company or her own label company? I don't know. I didn't dive into that because, as you know, I barely have time to follow BTS. I don't have time for any other acts. I'm sorry.
these artists are promoting in South Korea, the best case scenario for them is finding promotion opportunities for themselves inside South Korea. But the kind of promotions that the biggest group in the world requires are more than a new, inexperienced label can provide. Even if they get the best CEOs in music to work with them, the BTS members would have to go through the struggle of finding and working with experts they don't know and they don't trust. So they chose HYBE.
I think trust is the most important thing. You got to trust the people that you work with. You know, you're putting your livelihood on that company, right? Or in a company. So you need to have the trust, and it should be mutual, okay?
Label which made them debut and which knows BTS's style of working and promotion demands. Beyond this, the BTS members are business majors, and it's been reported that they already have a strong voice in the agency. RM has even made presentations challenging the company's projects and has successfully
Okay, interesting.
stop them. I believe this is why their contract negotiations always happen years earlier, and they come to a conclusion 2 years before the start of the new contract. This is not common in K-pop. Groups either announce that they are renewing their contracts a month or two before their previous contract is about to end, or they continue negotiating months after their contracts already ended. But by looking for a conclusion, after their contracts already ended. But by looking for a conclusion 2 years before the next contract is about to start, the BTS members have time to consult their lawyers, talk between each other, and tell their demands to the label. Actually, they were not shy with their demands for the second contract, which is the one they're currently signed to. This is what BTS told HYBE during negotiations for the second contract. We will give you 7 more years, but give us the acknowledgement that we deserve for the success that we have achieved and reflect that in the contract. This negotiation happened in 2018 when their highest peak was number 10 on the Billboard Hot 100, when they had no Grammy nominations and when they spent only 2 years in the global music industry. But now the BTS members have 8 number 1 songs, 5 Grammy nominations. They made billions of dollars not only for their small independent label but also to their country, and they have solidified a legacy for over a decade. So if they had high demands then, imagine what they were able to agree with this third contract. Actually, this contract required board approval, which
Wow, for approval, huh? Okay, so I didn't know that. Interesting.
means that the terms are above the regular threshold. This is unusual, and
Yeah, so I'm glad to see the boys making demand in their contract because they definitely earned it. They're the global superstar. They deserve the world. So I'm glad to see that they demand what they deserve in a contract. Let me go back a little bit. So
were able to agree with this third contract. Actually, this contract required board
it's an exclusive contract of BTS members. Okay.
approval, which means that the terms are above the regular threshold. This is unusual, and it can suggest that this new deal will give the BTS members bigger cuts, shares, exclusive rights, or something extra that the board had to approve. Only the down payment is estimated to be over 3 times what it was with their second contract. This is not the total they are getting for the entirety of the contract.
Let me see. Okay. Cool. I would think that the down payment means that signing bonus, right? That when you sign a contract, you get this upfront. And that's part of the contract. You get this upfront and then a cut of whatever you make within the contract period. That's how I read it. Well, that's how I hear it.
Contract. It's just a small initial payment. And of course, you would need to add all the money they will get when they actually come back in 2025. So yes, this contract is massive, probably the most important of their careers yet. The magnitude of this news were confirmed by RM, who as the leader of BTS shared a snippet of the contract on Instagram, followed by BTS ARMY 2025. And as a celebration of the contract renewal, Big Hit donated $750,000 to BTS's UNICEF campaign in the name of ARMY. So now that I talked a little about the basics of why they chose campaign in the name of ARMY.
Sorry. 700, right? Not 750.
BTS's UNICEF campaign in the name of ARMY. So now that I talked a little about the basics of why they chose to sign with HYBE, I'll talk about what I actually wanted to talk about, which is the importance of this contract in itself. Because if you really think about it, there has not been any other contract like this in the history of music. Don't think about BTS re-signing with HYBE. Think about what the existence of BTS as a 7-member group for approximately at least another decade means to pop culture.
방탄소년단 축하드립니다.
First, we need to contextualize the first 2 contracts. BTS started as a hip-hop idol group in the K-pop industry, and in this industry, most contracts last 7 years. This is of course if the group is successful, because if it isn't or if there's any conflict, the contract ends early.
22 years. I haven't heard of any of these people. One day. Ah.
However, even in the best case scenarios, successful groups will disband in their 7th year. This is why the K-pop 7-year curse exists. This is what RM said in BTS's 8th anniversary in 2021.
7 years, it symbolizes like an invisible limit for many Korean teams, especially the K-pop groups. The 8-year anniversary is kind of like a really like a momentum, and it's like a meaningful day for a group.
So the groups that sign with their labels for a second time are rare, but they do exist. However, I think it's important to make a very important distinction between BTS and other K-pop groups. To start, many of the K-pop groups that decide to continue being a group beyond the end of their contracts tend to sign with different labels individually, but they come together as a group from time to time, or at least that's what they promise. Because a common trend lately is having a silent disbandment. Other groups that do stay together for years and years have so many members that it's inevitable for all of them to stay in the group. But I don't want to be unfair. Of course, there are some K-pop groups that stay together for many years. The longest running K-pop group has been together with all of its members for more than 20 years. And while I congratulate them and hope for a similar future for BTS in terms of number of years, the reality is that BTS situation is different and way more complicated because there's no other group in the history of K-pop that has been able to truly pave their way in the global music industry. So as annoying as it can be to the BTS members, their decisions and future are of the industry's interest. Thousands of articles are made for every decision they make, and their contract renewal, disbandment, or any tiny decision by them will become international news, reported and analyzed for days
and reported incorrectly many times, unfortunately. It's one thing to report them, it's a not totally different thing to report them incorrectly.
Weeks, and
with personal opinions and personal speculations.
even months. This doesn't happen to K-pop groups, because as legendary as they can be to the K-pop sphere, their disbandment or renewal will have almost no effect in the global music industry or their country's economy. BTS being signed as a 7-member group to a Korean label means more tourism, more South Korean recognition.
How many of you are planning to visit Korea in the next 5 years? And how many of you are saving money for 2025? Well, I would just say that even if you save money for 2025, you might not be able to book a hotel over there because everyone's going to be there. So, okay. Let's go back a little bit.
7-member group to a Korean label means more tourism, more South Korean recognition internationally, and even more jobs for South Korean citizens. My point is that BTS signing not a second contract but a third contract is extremely rare.
It's an economic stimulant. BTS. It's economic stimulant.
There in the Korean music industry because no other Korean group has grown to the lengths of BTS to even think about making a decision this big. Beyond that, groups that do become relevant in K-pop don't stay together for more than one contract. Sometimes because when they get what appears to be bigger solo opportunities, either from Korean labels or international labels, they take them. That's what I find extraordinary. BTS plans to stay together after their military service no matter what. Hype's founder recently said that the BTS members wanted one of their first projects after coming back to be a special project related to their album trilogy, The Most Beautiful Moment in Life, whether it is with Hype or with any other label.
And as you know, in 2015, BTS released its Hwayangyona, or The Most Beautiful Moment in Life album and the album series, and this was a very important album series for them. We said to each other, let's make sure we put out a 10-year anniversary album and a project. If they hadn't signed with us, they still would have released it, just not with us. They would have done it with somebody else.
This special project was already kind of announced by Suga and
they are in the military and they will be back in 2025. They're already planning their comeback album. I'm sure that they're already making it. They just put it together and refining it while they're gone. And when they come back, immediately they're going to release it. I bet that's the case.
RM in 2022.
꼭 저희끼리 얘기했던 것 중에 어쨌든 2025년 대부분의 멤버들이 복귀할 해일 거고, 그다음에 이제 화양연화라는 저희의 기념비적인 어떤 화양연화가 10주년이 돌아오니까 그때는 무언가를 할 수 있을 것 같지도 않을까 뭐 이런 생각을 했었잖아요. 그것들을 좀 잘 지키려고 노력하지 않을까.
So whether the media wants to admit it or not, the biggest sign of this contract renewal came from the members themselves, because they are not going to promise things that are not going to happen. They know that each of their sentences can and will become global news.
Yes.
This is why they always negotiate and come to a conclusion years in anticipation. This prevents all high tensions and speculations by fans and the media about their future. Again, this is an extraordinary measure that BTS takes because of their position in the global music industry. Most groups that do...
And they feel, I think they are responsible people, that they know everything that they do will impact a lot of people around the globe, not just the fans or their own label, right? But also the music industry around the globe. It will be impacted. So they are responsible. So they plan ahead, make sure everything is reviewed and discussed and agreed upon before they will release any news. And that is a sign of maturity and responsible people. I just want to say it.
To sign a second contract, do it a couple of months before their first 7-year contract ends. Others keep negotiating after a couple of months before their tech industry. Most groups that do sign a second contract do it a couple of months before their first 7-year contract ends. Others keep negotiating after their contracts already ended, leaving their fans and investors of the label basically in the dark about what will happen. Now you may say that it's responsible for groups to take their time in negotiating these contracts. And I totally agree. But it's important to know that BTS always does what's beyond considered responsible. And that's another obvious sign the media try to dismiss. BTS doesn't wait until the end of their current contract to consider signing again. Instead, each of the 7 members take decisions together by consulting their personal lawyers 2 years in advance. They carefully think about and plan their future together. And this is a unique measure only BTS takes because of their unique position. So I don't want to hear any more comments diminishing the importance and uniqueness of this contract, because other K-pop groups lasted for decades too. When the news broke, some articles focused on how rare this type of longevity is in K-pop. It's rare, it's defining, it's a new standard set by them, and they are right. When it comes to K-pop contracts, the chances of disbanding are infinitely higher than the chances of making the group their priority. But BTS showed from day one that they are the exception.
Ladies and gentlemen, BTS.
So that was in the context of K-pop contracts. But Western contracts are another world, and Western group contracts are even more complicated. The global artists that have long-lasting music careers tend to be soloists, because it's easier for one person to make what they...
Because it's very, very hard for most of the Western band to agree on something. You know, egos always plays a big part. Who gets a bigger cut and who gets more screenshots, who gets more screen time, and who gets better stuff, who gets a bigger room or, you know, dressing room, whatever you call that. Yeah.
Consider the best decisions for themselves. But when a group is successful, they all have to take decisions together. And the chances of being able to do that for years and years is very low. Of course, there are legendary groups that have been together for decades. Coldplay is the closest example to BTS. And by their friendship and the conversations they had during the days BTS started their talks about their future, I think that BTS is looking for this longevity. I don't think it's a coincidence that both groups got closer to each other during this difficult time. So it's definitely possible for BTS to take a similar path. But I still want to highlight that BTS's third contract is not only rare in the K-pop industry. BTS is not only the biggest group in the world, but they are also the only group at the moment able to compete with soloists. BTS as a group are part of the world's top 10 artists. However, the second biggest group in the world and other popular groups cannot even enter the top 30. This is why this contract is even more impactful than you think. Historically, groups have not been able to succeed as much as soloists. Think about the groups that were able to actually compete with solo artists, from legendary bands like the Beatles to pop culture boy bands like NSYNC and One Direction. They only lasted for 10, 7, and 5 years respectively. So as the one massively successful group at the moment, it's remarkable and extremely rare for BTS to enter their second decade. Because this never happens when your group is at the top of the world. So if this third contract is so rare, weren't the predictions of disbandment by the media not that unreasonable? Like I said, I understand if this comes from people who don't know much about the industry, but the ones who make these articles are supposed to be K-pop journalists. They should know that their military service was inevitable, but they also should know that at this point, they don't promise things just to calm fans. They've never done that, and these journalists ignore this fact purposefully, in my opinion.
I think it's the creation of panic. It's what do you call that thing? I don't know I think there's a special name for it, but it's just creating the drama to try to sell, to get more views, to get more clicks. So yeah, I think there's a good journalism, there's ethical journalism, and there's just for-profit journalism, right? I think they're different.
Every journalist and fan who has followed BTS's career closely, this contract renewal should not be a surprise. Why? Because they've promised it would happen knowing that their country is looking at them. Because BTS always negotiates 2 years in advance. Because they've never lied about a project coming out. Because they've spoiled in 2022 their plans for a project in 2025. And you're still surprised that they renew? You still ignore all of this and choose to predict their breakup? You are delusional. Because no other group does this stuff. So they're actually
Or just stupid.
exists uncertainty with them, but not with BTS. And you know this. You're supposed to be an expert on this.
Yeah.
You study K-pop. You study boy bands. You study BTS's impact in the global music industry. So if you predicted the complete opposite of what just happened, maybe you should stop selecting only what you desperately wanted to see and start seeing the overall picture. Since the BTS members started enlisting, K-pop's growth has significantly decreased compared to when BTS was a 7-member group. So every media person wanting K-pop to succeed should have been wishing that BTS comes back,
Yes.
not the opposite. Because as easy as it was for Billboard and Western award shows to create K-pop categories, as easy it will be for them to take them away. We've seen it happen, and it can happen again. So let's celebrate that BTS is the exception. Let's celebrate that BTS is entering their 2nd decade in the history of music.
Okay, that was the BTS 2025 contract did not come out from all of nowhere, whatever it's the contrast. But we know what we just watched. So yeah, I've always wondered that those so-called journalists, they report on news, but they do it incorrectly, whether purposely or not. Regardless it's purposely or not, it's just like that's your job. Your job is to report news, whether it's global news, entertainment news, whatever. Don't you need to do fact check? Don't you need to make sure that you know what's going on before you report it? But I guess I think I couldn't get the word. I think it's called the sensational reporting was sensational journalism, that it just create this this big news, regardless if it's true or not, just to get more click, get more view, get more number, just for profit. I understand everything in the world is for profit, but just kind of like, why spreading fake news just to confuse people, just to create that, just want to stir people up. I don't get it. But anyway, we know BTS plan ahead. We know they're special people. They are ultra responsible. So they want to make sure that they plan everything properly and well, way in advance. And I'm very glad to see that they do put in their demands in their contract, so they get what they deserve. And as always, Boracity Magazine put out amazing videos. So until next time, I wonder what I'm gonna do next, but regardless of what it is, Boracity Magazine is definitely gonna be in my future videos. So have a wonderful day. Bye.